Ex-U.S. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French witnessed UFOs and two gray aliens underwater, he claims. Richard French, a former lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force, asserted in 2013 that the U.S. government had been hiding the existence of extraterrestrials ever since the infamous Roswell incident. French claims that there were two UFO crashes in the Roswell incident. He also explained why they had kept the existence of aliens a secret for so long. The underwater UFO encounter of Richard French. Colonel French spent more than 27 years in the U.S. Army. He received his Army commission and was promoted to fly fighter jets, and during his service in the U.S. Army, he was stationed in a variety of places, including Korea, Vietnam, Laos, and the Cuban Missile Crisis. When Lieutenant Colonel French allegedly served as Project Blue Book's senior investigator in the 1950s, it was his duty to refute false and fabricated UFO encounters. In the news announcement on July 8, 1947, Colonel Jesse Marcel claimed that the U.S. Air Force has recovered a flying disc with alien beings that had crashed in New Mexico. Unfortunately, the information in the subsequent press release was altered, and this time the crashed UFO was shown to be wreckage of a hot air balloon. The updated explanation for Colonel Marcel's misidentification of a weather balloon as a fell disc carrying alien bodies, a highly decorated combat officer who helped deliver the first nuclear weapons used in combat as an extraterrestrial body, was left unanswered by the fabricated hot air balloon crash theory. Though there were many who were skeptical about the crash, several U.S. military officers stated that the crash was indeed an extraterrestrial craft containing aliens. Additionally, the U.S. government reported on the entire incident under the guise of a military program that became popular as Project Mogul. French said that he witnessed the UFO crash in 1947 in Alamogordo, New Mexico. He gave an interview a few years ago, just prior to his demise in 2014, in which he recalled the day of the shocking incident and mentioned that there had been two accidents in Roswell. He said there were actually two crashes at Roswell, which most people don't know. And I didn't know that either until I read this article. And he said the first one was shot down by an experimental U.S. airplane that was flying out of White Sands, New Mexico, and it shot what was effectively an electric pulse-type weapon that disabled and took away all the controls of the UFO, and that's why it crashed. When they hit it with the electromagnetic pulse, bingo, there goes all the electronics, and consequently the UFO was uncontrollable. The electromagnetic pulse, the EMP pulse, that struck the UFO caused some glitches in its electronic system, leading to its ultimate crash. French asserted that he was in fact a government debunker of UFOs. He learned about the UFO that was shot down and the subsequent second crash near Roswell from a secret military source. He thought the second ship had arrived to attempt this and salvage parts while also rescuing the first ship's survivors. Other Army leaders refused to believe French's startling claims, and they questioned how, with such primitive laser systems at the time, the U.S. Army could have developed pulse-power weapons systems in the 1960s. French further stated that he was informed about the second crash by a confidential source, and the crash took place quite close to the first crash. He said, "We think that the reason they were in there at the time was to try to recover parts and any survivors of the first crash. I'm referring to people from outer space, the guys whose UFO it was. I had seen photographs of parts of the UFO that had inscriptions on them that looked like it was in Arabic language. It was like a part number on each one of them. There were photographs in a folder that I just thumbed through," he said. Numerous government representatives, including Edgar Mitchell, an astronaut from Apollo 14, and Luis Elizondo, former Pentagon UFO official, have confirmed that the authenticity of the Roswell crash incident. Edgar Mitchell said, Apollo 14 astronaut said, "Make no mistake, Roswell happened. I've seen secret files which show the government knew about it, but decided not to tell the public." Elizondo said, "I'll share with you some of the observations that were made by some people. Before I was part of ATIP, I had no idea about Roswell other than that there was some sort of alleged crash at some point, and some farmer found debris. But during my trip, the time with ATIP, there was some interesting anecdotal information that suggested there was not just one crash, there may have been two crashes, and that somehow it may have been related to some sort of testing that was being done at the time at White Sands, and that material was recovered." French describes how the occurrence in Newfoundland unfolded almost decades ago when multiple witnesses saw two UFOs off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland. His bosses tasked French with looking into the situation. At the citizen hearing in 2013, he verified in front of 6 former members of Congress his work on UFOs in 1952. French said, "They said, we have a UFO report and we want you to investigate it," and that was starting standard for what I was doing. They told me there were 2 of them involved and that they were deep under the water after entering the water doing roughly 100 miles an hour. He recalled seeing 2 submerged UFOs 6 meters, that's about 20 feet, from the coastline. In addition, he saw 2 aliens near the ships. He recalled how he was able to see what the aliens were doing at the bottom of the boat since the water was translucent. French said the water was fairly clear and I could see without any trouble. They were not down at the bottom of the seabed, they were about halfway down. The aliens, witnessed by Richard French, were petite in size and, as he described them, light gray in color, very thin, long arms with either 2 or 3 fingers. And they had large heads, and he was unable to distinguish the pupils in their eyes. While observing this once-in-a-lifetime occurrence, he observed one of the UFOs emerging from the ocean. When the ship emerged from the ocean, its speed was approximately 160 kilometers an hour, and then it accelerated to at least 4,000 kilometers per hour before vanishing. It took them about 20 minutes, and then the 2 ships departed together, again slow when they exited the water, and immediately they sped up to a very high speed. I believe they were repairing the ship and testing that the repairs had been adequate, and then away they went. In the 1950s, French also worked under Project Blue Book to conceal UFO claims. He was one of the authors who carried it out, and he said, "In other words, if someone had a UFO sighting, I and another agent would try to come up with some logical explanation for its strange aerial appearance. Most of the reports were from citizens that the military. We gave our analysis and tried to debunk it by saying it was swamp fog, or that the thing they saw was actually hanging on wires. It went up through channels all the way to the presidential level," end quote. French never comprehended why he was instructed to discredit UFO stories, but based on his own analysis, he concluded that if extraterrestrial visitors are visiting Earth, then, he said, it basically would destroy religions, and the fact that our military is helpless against them, and they would destroy the reputation of the military. This is by Infinity Explorers. Anj Srivastava. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.